Slipknot's mix of grinding, post-Korn alternative metal, Marilyn Manson-esque neo-shock rock, and rap metal helped make them one of the most popular bands in the nu metal explosion of the late 1990s and early 2000s. But even more helpful was their theatrical, attention-grabbing image. The band always performed in identical industrial jumpsuits and homemade Halloween masks, and added to their mysterious anonymity by adopting the numbers 0 through 8 as stage aliases. Add to that a lyrical preoccupation with darkness and nihilism, and an affectionately insulting name for their fans, Maggots, and Slipknot's blueprint for nu metal success was set. Emerging in 1995, the Grammy Award-winning band issued their eponymous debut album in 1999 and went mainstream with subsequent gold and platinum efforts like Iowa in 2001, All Hope Is Gone in 2008, We Are Not Your Kind in 2019, and The End So Far in 2022. However, here are some facts about Slipknot. The death of Slipknot's Paul Gray. Paul Gray was Slipknot's surprisingly warm heart. As Loudwire tells us, the bassist and songwriter was a pleasant man who remained friendly and down-to-earth despite his success. Unfortunately, there's a reason he's described in the past tense. Like everyone, Gray had a dark side, and his particular one was drug addiction. By the time Slipknot was preparing their third album in 2003, he was so deep in his heroin hole that the rest of the band actually staged an intervention. Gray eventually kicked his drug habit with his future wife for a while. Though he seemed to be the sober pillar of strength and calm amidst his significantly more chaotic bandmates even when they were touring, he unexpectedly succumbed to an accidental overdose of fentanyl and morphine in 2010. It was later revealed he also had a substantial quantity of Xanax in his system, and that he showed signs of significant heart disease. He was only 38, and wife was expecting their child. The bassist's shocking death shook Slipknot to the core, and they held a tearful video press conference to address the tragedy. Brenna stood with the band at first, but soon started blaming them for not helping Gray. Ultimate Classic Rock reports that Gray's Dr. Daniel Baldi, who prescribed him Xanax despite his addiction, was eventually taken to court for 10 counts of manslaughter. He was acquitted in 2018, though his legal battle with wife continues. Chris Fehn lawsuit against Slipknot. In 2019, a storm tore through the Slipknot camp. As Loudwire reports, the group's long-serving percussionist Chris Fehn, he with the long-nosed mask, was suing the rest of the group, claiming that Slipknot's business structure had gotten so confusing that other band members were essentially stealing money, and demanded forensic accounting to see precisely how much money he was owed. The rest of the band was less than delighted by the percussionist's actions, and promptly kicked him out of the group with a public statement that made no bones about their feelings. Chris knows why he is no longer a part of Slipknot. We are disappointed that he chose to point fingers and manufacture claims, rather than doing what was necessary to continue to be a part of Slipknot. We would have preferred he not take the path that he has, but evolution in all things is a necessary part of this life. According to Blabbermouth, Fehn has gone on to specify singer Corey Taylor and bandleader Sean Crahan as the people who he feels are receiving undue amounts of money. Still, despite his incendiary accusations, the Pinocchio masked musician appears to hold out hope of returning to the Slipknot fold someday. The Slipknot recording session from hell. Slipknot's 2001 sophomore album Iowa is as brutal as they come. According to Revolver, at least part of the album's sound may very well stem from the fact that its recording was an absolute horror show. The band was in a rather dark place thanks to the sudden and unexpected fame their first album had brought them, and the copious sex and drugs that tend to come with rock stardom had hollowed them out and left them depressed. Producer Ross Robinson broke his back during the recording and was confined in a wheelchair. Singer Corey Taylor had personal issues and a drinking problem, and ultimately resorted to cutting himself with broken glass during recordings just so he could feel something. Both guitar player Jim Root and DJ Sid Wilson had nasty breakdowns, and Wilson's even ended up on the record. His eerie sound booth freakout became the album's haunting intro 515. After the album was done, things didn't get much easier. The worn-out band now had to deal with a record company that had quietly expected a chart-friendly follow-up to their hit record, and now had to figure out how to work with the absurdly angry Iowa instead. Even the album's touring and promotion cycle brought little reprieve to Slipknot. Iowa came out a week before 9/11, and the band's aggressive music was banned from many radio stations in the aftermath of the terror attack. Mick Thomson's knife fight his brother. You'd think that Slipknot's hulking guitarist Mick Thomson would have little to fear in a physical confrontation, but as Rolling Stone tells us, in 2015 he was in a fight so bad that he left in an ambulance. Of course, in the interest of accurate reporting, it must be mentioned that the person who put Thomson in hospital was his own brother Andrew, and that the Slipknot man very much returned the favor. As the two men left the scene in two ambulances, this was the reported situation: the Thomson brothers had been enjoying a few drinks in a house in Clive, Iowa, when they started fighting for reasons unknown. The inebriated battle progressed to the building's front yard, and at some point knives entered the equation. Both men suffered non-life-threatening stab wounds, with Mick arguably the worse for wear due to taking one in the back of his head. Fortunately, both brothers survived the potentially deadly battle, though the police did note that neither individual was very cooperative when the authorities eventually arrived. Neither Andrew nor Mick wanted to press charges in the aftermath, but Clive police did charge them with disorderly conduct by fighting. Still, this potentially lethal case of sibling disagreement had at least one positive outcome. It probably doesn't hurt Thomson's heavy metal credentials that he can now casually state that he was once stabbed in the head. The teenage near-death experience of Slipknot Corey Taylor. Many members of Slipknot have had rough patches in their lives, but few started as early and as hard as vocalist Corey Taylor. As Blabbermouth tells us, the 15-year-old Taylor was living in a trailer park where, according to the singer himself, the activities were somewhat limited. At a place like that, there's only two things to do, really: you take drugs and you fuck. As such, the young Taylor developed a taste for narcotics. He particularly enjoyed cocaine and methamphetamine, to the point where they nearly killed him. One time, the teenage Taylor woke up in a trash can 12 miles from his home, with no shirt, no shoes and blood on his face. He eventually discovered that he had lost a couple of days. He thinks he was at a party and overdosed, and instead of taking him to a hospital, his friends merely dumped him in the trash can with the assumption that he was dead. Terrifying as the experience must have been, this particular dark cloud ultimately had a silver lining. During his long walk back home, young Taylor decided that he has to get out of that place. Suffice to say, he followed through.